Hello, everyone. My name is Mariana Sadakni, and I live in New York City. I am an NYC chief, and I am a fractional chief experience officer driving digital operations strategy and big wow customer experiences. Once upon a time, Kim Carpenter was my first corporate boss when we were both climbing the ladder in New York City's advertising industry. Since then, Kim has been one of the most influential individuals in my career and life path. It was a no brainer that someone that has all that to give to accelerate impact on women's lives, I had to share it with my chief sister. Her wisdom deserves to be shared. And here we are. As a brief intro, Kim Carpenter is a global speaker, a master executive coach. Kim founded People at the Center, where she now helps top leaders and their teams develop thriving company cultures that honor the human and boost the bottom line. Kim has coached and trained over 3,000 professionals at companies such as Apple, Netflix, Microsoft, AT&T, and PBS, among many more. I can't wait to introduce you to Kim and have you benefit from wisdom and her expertise. Kim, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mariana. Hi, everyone. It's so wonderful to be here with you today. I am also a chief guide. So I lead several groups at Chief, and it is the favorite part of my whole month when I get to jump on Chief core calls with you. So let's dive in. So how do we snap back and recover more quickly when the unexpected happens? That is our topic for today. And my intention is to have you feeling more powerful in the face of whatever is happening. So we can't always control everything that happens to us, right? But we can control how we show up in the face of those things. We can control ourselves and how we respond to those things. But how do we do that? Studies show that women experience power loss differently than men do. And we tend to turn it in on ourselves more quickly and judge ourselves more harshly. And let's face it, we are judged more harshly than men by others, especially in the corporate setting as well. I'm sure you're no stranger to the McKinsey Lean In Women in the Workplace report. If you haven't heard of it, do a quick search on Women in the Workplace report. It's fascinating. That shows that only 32% of VP seats in corporate are held by women and only 8% by women of color. C-suite seats are only 26% held by women and only 5% by women of color. So if you're here and you've made it to these seats, I know that you're already incredibly resilient. I know that you already have a tremendous amount of power and that you have had to overcome some crazy things probably to sit in the seat that you're sitting in. And I also know that you're changing the face of business. My experience in working with the chief groups that I run and the women's leadership coaching programs that I run is women are changing the face of business. We're changing how things operate. And really, let's look at it. Business is running the world. The world is run by business. And so you're really changing the face of our entire world. And in order to do what we're setting out to do here as a community in chief, which is elevating women to positions of power and keeping them, and beyond chief, right? Inside of your communities, inside of your families, inside of maybe you're involved in government, local government. We need to be able to stand strongly as women in the face of whatever is coming at us. And the world needs us to be able to do that. The world needs us to be able to regain our power quickly when we lose it. So I just wanted to give that context because I know that you're going through your own stuff that's challenging you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here watching this talk. And let's look at it as a collective. We all together need to be more powerful in the face of the unexpected. So my commitment to you today is to give you an access to expanding your capacity with this, to feel powerful when unexpected things happen that knock you off your game. And the key to that lies in our biology. So I'm going to be sharing more about that. But first, just a little quick bit about me. So Mariana talked to you about how we both started in corporate advertising. And I like to say I grew up in New York, but not because I spent my childhood here, because when I started working in New York City, I quickly learned that I had to develop a thicker skin. I was a pretty naive blonde girl from Austin, Texas. And I said y'all a lot more than I do now, because I think I educated it out of me. I New Yorked it out of me. But I really had to learn how to be tougher and learn how to be more resilient. So I just want you to know that I spent a decade working in corporate, and now I have, 20 years of training and coaching, and 15 years of having my own business where I'm helping others develop their leadership. But I started for, similar places to where you are, in times that were pretty tough. I had one agency that there was a dark room in the back called the bullpen, and all the creatives were men and all the account execs were women, and the account execs, AKA the women, weren't allowed to go back in the bullpen. And I have experienced harassment. I've experienced, the innuendo, the backstabbing, the infighting, like, you name it, I've been there too. So I just want you to really get present to that. Like, the people who are in this community are really powerful already. So let's get on with this. All right. The first thing I like to say to my clients is, unfortunately, life is going to life you. Life is going to show up, and unexpected things are going to happen, unpleasant things, and none of us get to, get through alive. None of us get through unscathed with that. Many of you have been through things. We've all been through a pandemic. Many of you have been through losing your job, losing people you care about. That's unavoidable. But here's the good news. As I said a moment ago, you are resilient. You are already powerful, or you wouldn't be sitting here where you're sitting. So I'm going to give you as much as I can possibly today in the short time that we have. And I promise that by the end of this, I'll let you know how you can take this further. I have a couple of free gifts for you and ways that you can really take this further. But my intention is that you have everything at your disposal that you might possibly, need in order to move forward. So let's start here. What causes you to lose power? So I'd love for those of you who are watching live to type in the chat, what are some of the things that cause you to lose power? Is it, things, some of my clients have said things like, there's a person who subtly diminishes me all the time, and it's very passive aggressive. It's not always overt. Or I'm in a meeting speaking, and this other person sighs audibly in the meeting. Or when people are texting and distracted the whole time, which happens all the time now on Zoom, right? Distracted and texting and working, and I'm seeing that they're not actually paying attention to what I'm saying. So let's see what it is for some of you. Some of you have said, colleagues that are difficult, people that constantly interrupt you. Great. Yeah, constant interruptions and people talking over you. Yeah, that causes you to lose power. Okay. And also just riffs, right? Yeah, having others around you who are being laid off or let go or demoted. Yeah, that has an impact on you as well. So here's the thing. When those types of things happen, unexpected things, reorgs, job change, pressure from boards and leaders, if you have initiatives that you've tried to implement that have failed, that haven't worked the way you thought they would, challenging people dynamics, high stakes and high pressure situations, decisions you have to make, what happens when we lose our power is we actually lose ourselves. And I'm going to tell you why this happens and what happens in your brain to cause that to happen. But we actually lose access to our natural, brilliant, prepared, confident, present, and effective self when those things happen. And here's why. we have this part of our brain that is constantly scanning our environment for threats. And when it senses a threat, it releases a chemical cocktail of hormones, stress hormones in our brain, and triggers the fight, flight, freeze, or appease response system. Now, a lot of people don't talk about appease, but if you think about it, when you were a child and you got in trouble, how many of you quickly learned to appease the person, your mom, your dad, your caregiver, like, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, okay, all right, right? You just did whatever you had to do to get out of that situation. So if some of you are experiencing people at work doing this, direct reports or others, you're experiencing people just appeasing and not being fully in their power, they might be experiencing what I call the amygdala hijack, right? The amygdala hijack. That's when your brain is flooded by those hormones and the access that you normally have to your brilliant self is no longer there. Now, here's what's interesting about our brains is that two scenarios occur and our two types of threats, and our brain reacts the same way to both of them. Okay, so two types and our brain reacts the same way. So the first situation is a real life or death scenario. So let's say you see this tiger and this tiger is swiping at your neck with its claws. That is a real life or death scenario. You might die. You might die in that situation, right? And so your brain goes into fight or flight, freeze or appease, and that's a really good thing, right? Maybe not so much appeasing with the tiger, but you get what I'm talking about here. The second scenario is an imagined life or death scenario. And your amygdala, your brain does not discriminate between these two. So instead of a real tiger, you've got a kitty cat. And the kitty cat is like the person in the meeting that's looking at you across the table and is just looking at you funny, or looking at you with like no expression, or looking at you in a way that you feel like they don't like what I'm saying, or they disagree, or something like that. Now, the point here is our brain reacts the exact same way to both. And these days, the imagine life or death scenario for us is mostly this threat of a social rejection or something like that, right? And imagine, just think about like the human beings walking around on the planet. We don't have saber-toothed tigers trying to attack us and kill us. We're not cavemen, but we have people that we might perceive are trying to kill us, kill our careers, kill our chances of advancement, kill our ideas. And that occurs to our brain like a real life and death scenario. Now, why does this happen? It happens because in our brains, we have a built-in alarm system. That's the amygdala hijack. It happens instantaneously in a snap. It's a built-in alarm system that is meant to get us out of danger very, very quickly without giving us any time at all to analyze the situation. So the same way, like you jump if something happens, right? If a car is changing into your lane, there's a quick reaction. Oh my gosh, get out of the way, right? If these car lights were coming at you, you would just jump out of the way. You wouldn't spend time thinking about, I wonder what the velocity of that car is, and do I have time to get out of the way if I can run a 10-minute mile? No, you're not going to be stopping and thinking about it. You're just going to get out of the way. So that's how our brains work. So our brains get hijacked, triggered by these hormones that cause us to run or fight or have a stress reaction. So our brains see these two things the same way: life or death, perceived life or death, which for most of us is just like a threat of some type of negative social interaction or something like that happens to us. So your amygdala is looking at the world, and its only job is to identify threat, non-threat, threat, non-threat all the time. That's it. There's no logic, reason, rationalization. No, it's just that guy's looking at me funny across the table. I'm trying to present my information in the deck, and I'm triggered. I'm amygdala hijack. I no longer have access to the logical, rational, calm, reasoning center of my brain because I am in fight or flight threat mode. Now, this information, if you want to go deeper into this, this is a great resource. Daniel Goleman wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ. And I love that so much. And he talks about the stress hormones cortisol, epinephrine, adrenaline that get released when you have an amygdala hijack, that suppresses the blood flow to your logical, rational reasoning center in your prefrontal cortex. That's why you lose access to the normal, brilliant you. And get this, studies are showing that you can be 10 to 12 IQ points lower when you have an amygdala hijack. So think about that for yourself. It takes about 18 minutes to re-regulate the brain chemistry so that you can kind of come back to being able to access that logical, rational reasoning center. Because remember that instant happening, that instant alarm system that keeps you, in fight or flight mode, it takes a few minutes to get it down. And in fact, it takes like a day, 24, 32 hours to get all of the stress hormones completely out of your system. So imagine someone who's constantly amygdala hijacked throughout their day multiple times. That person's not going to show up as smart as when they're just in a calm state. So if you are a leader, which I know all of you are, you might also want to be thinking about, how do I ensure that my team is not being amygdala hijacked, right? How do I create relationships? And that's a lot of the work I do with teams. How do I create relationships of trust and psychological safety so that people are showing up as smart as they really are? Or are there people on my team who seem like they're nervous a lot of the time, or they're not able to think clearly, or they get into high stress situations and they're not able to kind of process information in the same way as when I just am having my one-on-one with them? Maybe something's going on there. So a lot of the work I do is to bring this information into teams so that people can talk about it more openly and share around how do we create situations where everything's not perceived as a threat. And I'm working a lot with teams right now who are in the middle of, rifts, downsizing, mergers and acquisition situations, so that people aren't continuously amygdala hijacked, but they're creating the capacity inside themselves to snap back more quickly. And that's what I'm going to tell you in just a minute. So here is what happens when you get amygdala hijacked. It's what I call the amygdala hijack snowball effect. So something happens, right? Let's give the example of what someone shared. Someone talks over you in a meeting and interrupts you constantly. So something happens. That person does that. You're speaking in a meeting, someone just starts talking over you. The next thing that happens, and it immediately automatically happens, is that you have familiar thoughts, feelings, and sensations. And the reason why I say they're familiar is because if you really look at it, the feeling you have when that person interrupts you and starts talking over you, it's not the very first time that you've ever had that feeling or those thoughts or the bioreactions of the tightness in your chest or the hot face or the sweating a little bit, whatever that is for you. That's not the first time you ever felt that. There's probably a memory. If you can't identify the memory, you can identify, I think I've felt this way before. Maybe when you were 5 years old, maybe when you were 13, giving that book report in front of the class and someone started talking over you. Maybe it was a family member, right? We have these neural pathways in our brain that become like grooves in our brain. And so when these situations pop up, that 10 years later it's a business meeting and someone's interrupting you, it's going to feel like it did when you were 5 or 7 or 13 when that thing happened, because you have that groove. It's like you pop back into that familiar groove in your brain and the hijack happens and you have those familiar sensations. So just look at that for you and see what that is for you. The next thing that happens, and again, this happens immediately, but I'm slowing it way, way, way down for you so you can really feel it in yourself and see it, is you have assumptions, interpretations, and added meaning to what happened. So let's take what we were talking about. I'm in a meeting, I'm speaking, someone interrupts and starts speaking over me. I have immediately, automatically, familiar thoughts, feelings, and sensations. My chest feels tight. My face feels hot. I think it's getting red. My heart starts beating a little faster. And then I have assumptions, interpretations, and I add meaning to what's happening. So I say, there he goes again. That guy is such a jerk. He doesn't respect me. He wants my position. And I am now at the base of this hill in this snowball tumbling around in this added meaning and assumptions and relating to it like the truth. Like he is a jerk, right? I can't ever trust him again. He wants my job. And that's when you lose your power. So it's interesting, right? It's not the thing that happened. It's not, I'm talking, someone also talks at the same time. That's what's actually happening. But the power loss happens at the base of the hill in the tumbling snowball when you are in your own thoughts and you're not actually just present with, wow, that guy's interrupting again. You are in the tumbling snowball of the meaning and assumptions. So I invite you to look at what that is for you. When's the last time you felt amygdala hijacked? What happened? What were the immediate and familiar thoughts, feelings, bioreactions, sensations that you had? What assumptions, interpretations, and meaning did you add? What was happening? And then what were you left with in this tumbling of meanings? And, when many of my clients say, I stopped being able to hear what that person was saying. I was just so upset that I was just sitting back in my own reaction instead of listening or I couldn't even hear what they're saying, right? So see what happens for you. So if our brains work this way, what can we do to recover quickly? I'm so glad you asked. So I created this 4-part process out of, as I said, 20 years of working both in corporate and with my own private clients, managing teams of people in advertising, lots of egos, lots of amygdala hijack happening. I created this process called S.N.A.P, and it's a 4-part process. So I'm going to have Mariana give you the link to the workbook in the chat. And if you're watching the recording of this, I will send you the workbook so that you can have the S.N.A.P formula at the ready. And one thing I want to say before I go into this is for those perceived life or death situations, right? This is the kitty cat situation. These are the little things that happen to us. If you're in actual danger, if you're actually being, harassed, or it's a dangerous situation, physical, mental, emotional harm or abuse, you need help. You need to just fight or flight. You need to get out of that situation. So this process can help you see a little bit more clearly what's going on and have a little bit more power and agency. But really, this process is for those seemingly innocuous things that are happening in the workplace that you want to have some more power and agency over, because it's not a life or death situation. Okay. So just wanted to give you that little side note and make sure that you're taking care of yourself when you need to. All right, so let's dive into it. So the first in the S.N.A.P, S.N.A.P, is to see or sense that you're actually having an amygdala hijack. So that's the first thing. Awareness is power, and separating yourself from the reaction that your brain is having is maybe half the way there, right? It's half the battle. It's just noticing that your brain is just putting things into threat, non-threat buckets. Now, this takes really intentional practice, and you will probably not be able to see it immediately, right? When you're in the amygdala hijack, like I said, it happens in a snap. It happens like that. It's the body sensations, the feelings, the emotions, the meaning, all on top, snowball down at the bottom of the hill, right? Like it's immediate. And so probably at the beginning, after the fact, you'll be able to see, oh my gosh, my amygdala was totally hijacked. I went off the rails, I got upset, I closed down, or I lashed out, or I did something that wasn't my normal, calm, rational self and behavior. So I want you to not worry about it if you're not able to head it off at the pass and interrupt it. But over time, as you practice this, you will be able to interrupt the pattern and interrupt the brain pattern, really, and interrupt the reaction with practice. It's just like working a muscle. So one of the things I'm going to invite you to do is to actually keep an amygdala hijack journal. And that is a place, it can be a little notebook or piece of paper or a document on your computer that you just start to intentionally notice. When did I have an amygdala hijack? What happened? What actually happened? What were my bioreactions, my thoughts, feelings, emotions? What did I add? What meaning and interpretation did I add to what happened? So you just start to notice it and you just start to become aware and see the hijack. That's the first thing. The second is to notice the automatic, familiar, and generally negative thoughts, feelings, and sensations that you're having in the amygdala hijack. So first is just, hey, I'm hijacked, I'm having a hijack, or I was hijacked. And then what were those familiar negative things? Some of us are going to point that negativity inward. I shouldn't have said that. I should have stood up to that person who interrupted me in the meeting. I should never do that again. I should never, it's all my fault that I trusted that person and I knew I shouldn't, whatever that is. Some of it's going to be turned inward. For some of you, it might be turned outward. For some of you, it might be both, right? They're a jerk. I can't do this. I can't trust this. I got to get out of here. I need to quit my job right now, whatever that is. So just know that that's automatic. In the same way that you don't make your heart beat, you don't make your blood pump through your body. You don't make this automatic reaction happen. It just happens. So as I said, with practice and presence, you're going to start to be able to interrupt the pattern. So I'd like you to look at what's happened for you. Maybe there's something in the last week. Sometimes I ask, do you have a family? Did you go to work? Did you drive this week, right? Did anything happen that you can notice those automatic, familiar, negative things? And just start to look, just start to be curious, be like a detective. So that's the next action. A is to analyze what's actually happening. So that's what's actually happening. Like I open my mouth and words come out, and then someone else opened their mouth and words come out. Like that's what's actually happening without any additional meanings, assumptions, inferences, conclusions, right? Or the things that you tell yourself about what happened. So when I say this, it's like if you were a fly on the wall and all you could do was observe what's happening, what would you see? I would see a person talking, another person talking. I would see a person stand up, walk out of the room, right? Like what would I see that's actually happening? So in the case of the person who constantly interrupts you, you're speaking for X number of minutes, and then that other person takes over the conversations and they start speaking, for example. So in this, remember that you want to look at what happens and what you're assuming, interpreting, and adding meaning. And then what do you say to yourself about that thing? What do you say to yourself? So I want to share a really quick story of a client. I was coaching a CEO through an IPO situation. It was a global tech company, and they're about to go public. And some of the board members who were the venture capital investors in the company had a very difficult relationship with the CEO. The CEO felt like he needed to really fight with these people all of the time. The investors had a really strong reputation for being cutthroat. And, so I would say, man, if you're in a startup, pay attention to who you take money from, because these people don't just leave your lives. So anyway, the CEO hired me to coach him through this situation. And we were noticing his amygdala hijack. He would have amygdala hijack before the board meeting. So 2 to 3 nights ahead of the board meeting, he would start worrying, ruminating, rehearsing. They're going to say this, I'm going to say this, I'm so mad, I'm so upset. So he was losing sleep for multiple nights, which is not having him show up as his best self and consistently re-triggering his amygdala. Then during the board meeting, for sure, something would happen. The person would say something that he was anticipating, or something similar, and he would lose his power because he wasn't fully present in the moment with what was being said. He was just in the snowball of this. These people are jerks. They're, this is so hard. I'm never going to win this argument, this fight, whatever, I have to fight. And then after the board meeting, he would beat himself up. He would just really be upset. I should have done this. I should have said that, because with some time and distance from the amygdala hijack, he could see, oh, I actually should have said this. I should have said this. I could have said it this way, and that would have been so much more effective. So we worked with him on really looking at what's actually happening. So 3 nights ahead of the board meeting, what's actually happening? I asked him, what are you doing at night? That VC is not in your bedroom. So what's actually happening? And he goes, oh, I'm just ruminating. I'm playing it over and over in my head. and I'm getting upset, and I'm not being a good CEO for my people, right? So we looked at, during the board meeting, yeah, you're not as smart as you could be. Your IQ points lower. Like, how can you show up differently in those situations? So we had him really connect to what's his commitment? What's his commitment to the company? What's his commitment to, his people, the vision, even himself, his commitment to himself, and taught him some practices that I'm going to share with you in just a minute. And he was able to have more agency, more presence. So he was able to like be curious in those meetings and lean in and ask more questions and not take everything so personally in the way that he had. So that's what I'm talking about with you. If we can get you to a place where you have more agency and power. So the key to that are two things: practicing this, practice, and cultivating presence. This is, I think, not as leveraged and understood as it could possibly be. I think people sometimes hear presence and they think that's woo-woo stuff. But I really want to tell you, the C-suite leaders and senior VP leaders that I work with who are really extraordinary have some type of practices that they do for themselves to stay centered and calm and rational, have access to all of their brains, all of their IQ, right? And yes, they get upset sometimes, for sure. And with these practices, they're able to calm themselves down. So P is just a practice looking at your amygdala hijack, noticing the natural automatic reactions, noticing the automatic thoughts, feelings, sensations, noticing the stories and added meaning and assumptions, and then removing that to see what is there to actually do. What is there to do now? If I don't have the added meaning and assumptions and all the things I'm telling myself, and I go back up to the level of what's actually happening, what's left for me to do, like the CEO, reconnect to my commitment, lean into curiosity. But when we're hijacked, it's really hard to see any of that. Okay, so I'm going to give you 3 presence tips that you can practice. So the first is what I talked about before, the amygdala hijack journal. Notice your reaction, the automatic things that happen, look at what actually happened. And then if you take that away, what are you left with? What would be the more powerful version of you? And how could you show up in that situation differently next time? So awareness is key. The second presence tip are actually 3 different breathing techniques. Now, breath holds a lot of power, and there are functional MRI scans that we can hook up to our brain to notice different parts of our brain lighting up. I actually did a breath work study where I went into a brain lab, and before doing any kind of deep breathing breath work, and then after, and noticing what parts of my brain were lighting up. And then I did this type of breathing practices every day for 10 days. And I went in and did a brain scan and noticed what parts of my brain were differently lit up by cultivating presence. So this is real, it's scientifically proven. So the first is called 4-7-8 breath. And I'm seeing some of you posting already that you do the 4-7-8 breathing, which is wonderful. So the 4-7-8 breathing activates your parasympathetic nervous system. It's the part that calms your brain down. It tells your brain it's not an actual life or death situation. I don't need to run away right now. I can relax, and it starts releasing positive chemicals in your brain. So 4-7-8 is you breathe in for 4 counts, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold for 7 counts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and exhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the exhale is twice as long as the inhale. That's what activates the parasympathetic nervous system reaction. Use your own counting. You don't have to count at my pace. Use the pace that's right for you. Breathe in very deeply. And if you want to do this, if you could want to do this on your own, you can even make a sound, like a sound when you breathe out on the 8 counts. But I got to say, you can actually do 4-7-8 breath in a meeting. If you're feeling amygdala hijacked, you just breathe in, hold it for 7, and breathe out. As long as you don't have to speak in that moment, no one's going to know you're doing this. And you can calm yourself down by doing that 3 times right there in that meeting. Okay, the next one is called box breathing. It's very similar, but this is used by Navy SEALs to focus and hone in and calm themselves down into a calm, focused state. So it's breathing in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. So it's in the shape of a box. In, hold, out, hold. For 4, it could be 4 counts. It could be however many counts feel good to you. So, but it's equal holding, inhaling, exhaling, and holding. That's box breathing. The last one is a little bit more imaginative. So if you love using your imagination and that really works for you, you can try this. I've had clients that love it. And so what you do is you imagine on one palm, you have a magic button, and imagine that that magic button can send a signal directly to your brain to calm down the amygdala hijack reaction, to create calmness, to create confidence, to create power, whatever it is you want to create. With your other hand, you use your thumb and you press the magic button, and then you breathe in deeply. And as you breathe in, the signal goes to your brain to calm down, and then you exhale, releasing anything that you need to exhale. You can combine these, you can do magic button and box breathing or 4-7-8 breath. And you can also hold your hands right under your desk so that nobody, or under your video screen, so that nobody knows that you're pressing the magic button to calm your brain down. So those are some presence tips related to breathing. The last one is actually very simple. It's human connection. What we know is human connection calms our brain down. So some of the teams that I work with, actually, when we're working around calming amygdala hijack, creating psychological safety, we have people work together to be each other's, what I call the voice of reason. So the voice of reason person, who's your voice of reason partner, can actually help you use the S.N.A.P process to ask you questions when you're amygdala hijacked. You're like, I'm hijacked. I need to get out of this. What actually happened? What are your body sensations and automatic bioreactions, thoughts, and feelings? What are you telling yourself about what happened? What additional meaning are you adding? And then if you were to take that away and step back into your power and your agency and, speaking in this calm way, what can you see that there is to do? So just connecting to another person. Now, it's very important your voice of reason doesn't collude with you or add to your story and go, yeah, that guy, he's an interrupter and he's such a jerk and you can never trust him and don't ever, right? No, the only job of the voice of reason is to listen and then help you walk down the amygdala hijack, right? Or go back up the snowball, right? Back up the snowball effect visual. When you do this, even just making human connection, even if you don't even share about the amygdala hijack. I know some of you have, situations that are very confidential. Maybe you're just like, wow, I can't even talk about this, but I just want to connect. Okay. So just looking into someone's eyes that you trust helps your brain settle. So this human connection can create a release of oxytocin, which is the feel good, right? Dopamine, positive feeling, hormones, and chemicals. Now, eye gazing can be very impactful, but you also have to be careful because in some cultures, it's very confrontational. They're not used to it. People aren't raised looking, it's not okay to look people in the eyes. Sometimes it's a male-female thing. So you just want to be careful. It's not across the board. You can just go gazing into other people's eyes, right? You want to pick people that you really trust and establish permission to do that. So those are your 3 presence tips. And just as a reminder, the S.N.A.P formula, see that you're having the hijack, notice the negative feelings and sensations, analyze what's actually happening, and practice and cultivate presence. So I'd love for you to share in the chat, what action are you going to take from this conversation to regain power more quickly next time? And it's really powerful. Anytime you can write that down, you're something like 78% more likely to accomplish something that you write down. So I'd write down an action. Are you going to share this S.N.A.P process with a colleague or with your family? I had one client who came to my talk and she said, oh my gosh, I went home and I said, honey, we need to sit down. I need to share some things with you because I realized I've been getting amygdala hijacked with you and reacting. And it's really not about you. Like it's about situations that happened in my past. Right. So however you use this, use it for yourself, take what's useful and adapt it, adopt it, apply it to yourself and your situation. Now, I'm getting some great comments here. Wonderful. So people are going to practice the breathing. Yeah, great. And practicing presence and just building more awareness, keeping the hijack journal. Yeah, so great. So great. I love seeing that. Thank you so much. Okay, so I want to give you a few extra tools because I want to make sure, as I said, that you have access to being powerful and coming back to that power anytime the unexpected happens. So I created the workbook. I told you about that. So you've got that in the link is in the chat. Mariana put it in the chat and go ahead and download that there. If you're watching the recording of this, I will email that to you. And I also wanted to give you something, the 21 days to resilience program, because what I've seen is this is like a muscle, like a habit that you need to practice in order for it to really stick. And there are lots of studies on how long it takes to build a habit, but 21 days is a pretty good time frame. So the 21 days to resilience program, you're just going to sign up at that link with the QR code, and every day for 21 days, you'll get a little micro mini training email right to your inbox. They build on each other one day after the next. So there's some presence practices in there. There's things that you're going to start to do every single morning. They just take a couple of minutes, but I promise you, it's going to make a big difference for you. It makes a really big difference for my clients. And, they're able to do things like the CEO, that I shared with you has definitely still has some challenges with his board members, but things have gotten a lot better as far as his relationship to his power. And that's just one example. So if there's anything at all that I could do for you, please let me know. And I will also send you all my contact information. Mariana, I just wanted to invite you to come back on. And I just want to thank you so much for the honor of getting to spend time with you and the chief group today.
Thanks to you, Kim, for sharing your wisdom with the chiefs. This has been amazing, and there's so many insights and action steps, very quick action steps we can take just to become better leaders. So thanks again. We enjoyed it. I enjoyed it tremendously, and I got great feedback from the group. So we cannot wait to see you again. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.